Do you think that my voice sounded really squeaky?
No, you asked a brilliant question. He loved it. But I always wonder what people like that are really like, don't you? I mean, underneath all that crap.
Did you see his shoes? Loafers with
No,
yellow
it's got
socks.
yellow socks. Oh, it's better than the beret, though.
Woo!
Oi, fuck off! Hey, Holly!
Hi, welcome to this BFI at Home event and very special One with the Movie Camera Q&A. My name's Kim Sheehan and I'm a programmer at the BFI, and tonight I am so thrilled to be joined by director Sandra Goldbacher to talk about her film Me Without You, which turns 20 years old this year. Sandra, hello, thank you for joining us.
Hi.
I wanted to start at the very, very beginning with this Q&A. Where did Me Without You come from? Was it based on or inspired by a friendship in your own life?
Yes, it was. Yeah, like so many women, I did have an incredibly intense teenage friendship. Well, maybe started from about 11, I would say, from 11 to about 18, 19 when we did get our divorce. But it was such an important thing in my life. Even after we stopped being friends, I would dream about this girl 3 or 4 times a week and about our friendship. And it really took making the film to sort of exorcise her, I guess I would say.
Wow.
And it wasn't until I'd finished the film and was showing the film and I realised, oh, I've actually stopped dreaming about her or us. So yes, I did. I mean, lots of things are different, but I think that, the dynamic is very much based on
And your own experience.
friendship. Yeah.
And how did you develop that into a story? When you said that it was almost like an exorcism doing the film. Were you aware that you needed to do this or you needed to tell this story?
I think I just kept coming back to that dynamic and everything I was trying to do. I mean, it was right at the start of my film. I'd made a couple of shorts, and then I hoped that this would be my first film. It wasn't actually my first film, it was my second one. It was more difficult to finance, I think, because it was, what's it about? Who's the audience? It's just a couple of girls, it's episodic, which is all true. But I just knew I kept coming back to this dynamic of these two girls and this sort of toxic but incredibly powerful and intense friendship and this extrovert-introvert dynamic in other things that I was sort of looking at. I realised that this was just the story that I just had to kind of get out there.
You just touched on it a little bit there where you said, it was your second film and you were a bit like, well, do people want to hear this story? How was it getting this film made? Was it difficult? Was there an interest in the sort of British film industry at the time for, stories like this?
There was definitely an interest amongst individuals that I met, and the women producers and the actors were all, very excited by it. But it was, and we developed it with Film 4, but I think it was definitely that sort of doubt about who is the audience going to be. It's not high concept, it's not, it's episodic. It is about a relationship, and it has got these sort of anti-heroes, I suppose they are anti-heroes at the heart of it, So it probably took about 6 years, I would say, from starting to write it to actually getting it on screen. And I had to make another film in between, so it wasn't the easiest plain sailing, but the people who did want to do it were very sort of passionate about doing it.
You just mentioned that the actresses were sort of excited about it, and that leads us to Anna Friel and Michelle Williams, who obviously huge stars now. What was the casting process with those two like, and working with them?
Oh, it was wonderful. I was so lucky to have them both. It just felt like it was going to be fantastic chemistry from the start. And I'd met them both separately, obviously, and I met Michelle in the States. And then I was just very lucky because we had quite a lot of rehearsal time built in because it was so much about performance. So what I was lucky enough to do was I had both the girls, I'm calling them girls because they were very young, come to my house to rehearse for the first few days. And I didn't introduce them as themselves. I sort of introduced them to each other in character, and Michelle just brilliantly stayed in her London accent all the way through, so she stayed in character. I just felt it was really important they didn't meet and sort of, oh, how are you? What are you doing? What have you? You know, they just actually meet in character, and we sort of had that. It was in this room actually, dark, just candles and cushions on the floor, and I said, it might sound mad, but could you just start off as your 7-year-old selves and improvise around this, whatever it was, some argument or something? And they just went straight into it, and they improvised as their 7-year-old selves, then as their 10-year-old self, and as their 11-year-old. It was absolutely brilliant. I mean, I wasn't sure how they were going to react, but they just used it fantastically. So then that was something that then we've just built on in the rehearsal period, so that sometimes I'd send them out on their own just to have a little adventure in character. So they went off to a charity shop and pretended to nick something and took it back. That kind of thing, you know, outfits and little adventures that they did to recreate that sense of high octane excitement that you'd get over the silliest things, really.
The intensity and evolution of friendship in this film is so well observed. Was there anything that sort of came out in the writing process or the workshop process that you wished you could have included but you didn't get to?
Those are things that I did talk about a lot with Anna and Michelle, but there was very much this sort of process of, I guess, with the more dominant character urging the other one into adventures, things that she didn't necessarily want to do. And there are things we sort of fed in, but they didn't end up in the film because we couldn't afford to do them. But there was something that my friend used to do with me, which would be on the tube. And as the train came into the platform, we'd have to stick our feet right under the train as it came in and count out this sort of rhythm. And then, you know, get back from the train, and we did get absolutely screamed at by one of the guards at one time. But that was the sort of dynamic that I wanted to get into the friendship, even though it's things that you might not necessarily see, that's things that they would have done. So it's that kind of power dynamic that keeps you addicted, I suppose.
Just on those, you know, you describe what almost sound like workshops and kind of improvisation sessions in your own home, in the room you're in right now. And did that feed directly into the story? Were you still tweaking and developing the script after you met them both?
Yes, I did. Yeah, we did definitely, and definitely played around with language and the sort of patterns of the way that they were with each other, and all sorts of things that they found when they were improvising. In fact, Anna, the thing with Anna, the Marina character smokes, putting the cigarette in her toes. That completely just came up when they were lying on the floor with their legs up the walls. And she said, "Oh, instead of passing it, like, why don't I just pass it with my toes?" And that became one of their things.
Fantastic! That's one of my favorite little touches.
Yeah, no, it's great.
I love it. I think, you know, as well as this film being quite a good, well-observed exploration of those sort of intense female friendships you grow in your early years, I think there's lots of other great things going on. Particularly, there's quite a refreshing attitude to female pleasure and sex in the film, which is still refreshing. Was that something you felt quite conscious of when you were writing it, and was that deliberate?
I don't know, that I didn't sort of think, oh, this must be the female gaze and I must make a stand. But I think that's just how it happens when you're writing something from the point of view of characters.
Experience.
You come to know them from your experience. And I wanted that sort of sense of, I suppose it's Holly's projection in a way, is how she feels about Marina's brother. So that she's the voyeur, I guess, isn't she, when she's watching him in his pants in his room. I just felt I wanted it to be real and sort of what it's like as a teenager, and the slight sort of grubby unbiddenness of it, you know, the way he kind of just tumbles into her fantasies when she's young, and then older sort of tumbles in as well. So when she's fantasizing about sleeping with Nat and her boyfriend at the same time, they're kind of unbidden, not not very glamorous sort of fantasies, aren't they? They kind of he sort of rolls through in a flowery duvet, whatever it is. So I guess that's just, I wanted that, and I guess the way that the Marina character is, with that narcissism and her sort of powerful kind of charisma that she has, that she feels she can take charge, and then the men that come into their lives, it's almost, their relationships are more about the two women than they are about the man, so even though maybe they're exploited by their tutor, but also they're kind of colluding in being their obsession with each other. That's the power play, and I think that happens, doesn't it? It happens until we grow out of it.
Yes. I wanted to talk, since the film, we're here today because this year 2021 marks 20 years since the film came out. It's sort of 20th anniversary.
God, yes.
Sorry to remind you. I'd like to talk about its sort of legacy, not just the film itself, but for you, how, you briefly mentioned it helped you sort of exercise a few demons, but how did the film change you and change your life?
Well, exercising the demons was important. Well, it did. I got sort of lots of offers from States, actually. It did pretty well, to do other films, and then I guess I was sort of off then. But then after that, I did ballet shoes, and I've definitely found that all, particularly women actors who I'm going to be working with, really respond to me without you. It always makes me feel that it's a good thing to show them and reassure them, and collaborators have always sort of wanted to.
It's a film I discovered, sort of I stumbled upon it. It feels like, and it's a film that I adore it, and I recommend it to female friends all the time.
Oh, thank you.
And so many people, they watch it and they have the same reactions, and it seems almost universal. Everyone had a bit of a toxic friendship in their time. But I was wondering, have you found that, like you say, you use the film for collaborators to get a sense of your work, but do you find that how do people respond?
Yeah, exactly that. I do. I find that every woman I talk to is always that toxic friendship somewhere, or the very powerful friendship, and something that I think it's a way that teenage women do work out their senses of selves, don't they? And they work them out very powerfully against each other, and maybe they're sort of working out things as they move on. They separate from their mothers, and they're working out things they maybe haven't quite worked out with their mother, or and it's I've got so many people just tell stories and say, "Oh, we did that," and no matter how the dynamic is, they might be different, but I think everyone does have that, don't they? And I think you probably do have to work through those so that you can have those much better friendships that you have in later life. Well, I'm in much later life than you, but absolutely. And it's I always find it very fascinating, actually.
Yes, I don't know where I've read it, but I have read previously sort of your friendship divorces are always much more painful than your sort of relationship divorces and breakups. And I think this, and that's part of this film having kind of quite a universal response to it. Have your feelings on friendship, and perhaps that friendship in particular that inspired the film, did that change on the other side? You said you stopped dreaming about this person, but how have your feelings about friendship changed over the years?
Feeling about well, I've got very strong, very good female friendships now, and I definitely, and so important, and I definitely know that if something is beginning to feel like it could be toxic or codependent, I sort of know how to either move away from it or confront it, probably. And I think there's another sort of stage of friendship that can happen when you have children, and the intensity of the school gates, and you get this, all those sort of odd power plays from teenage years come back into play again, because there's a sort of narcissism about your children, possibly. But that's another That's another sort of stage, which sometimes makes you regress, I think. So it's made me think a lot about that when that was or wasn't happening. I think I do look back on that, and I see how sort of less emotionally intelligent we were in the 70s and 80s in terms of mental health, probably. And I do see that my friend probably did have some OCD issues, most definitely, and possibly anorexia and all sorts of issues around control that I then entered into. It's always two people. And I can see that this sort of daring to do things, sort of power play, was something. It was always this sense of, if you don't do this, something terrible will happen. And then I'd enter into that kind of superstition, and that is OCD, isn't it? I guess. But I would feel that, she then would withdraw her friendship and her love if I didn't then do this thing, like putting my feet under the train. Yeah, punishment would come down from the sky on us. Yes. And then also, I do also think about the incredible time that we did have, and that absolute, which so many people say, don't they? The absolute sort of knicker-wetting hysteria and fun of the things that you invented together that no one can really, you don't understand it from the outside, do you? You sometimes, you often don't really recreate those absolute intense highs again, do you? We had all sorts of hysteria. I was just thinking about this actually, just before talking to you. We built up this terror of the Hare Krishnas, and we were, the sweetest set of people, the Hare Krishnas. We were absolutely like, oh my God, they're coming Oxford Street. Oh my God, we can hear the Hare Krishnas. Oh my God, there's them. And we would go running away, platform shoes falling, and it was hilarious. It was brilliant fun, probably. At the time, it seemed like that's what you do, isn't it? When you're
14.
And
I think that's what you capture so well in the film, is that, and I think it's just so identifiable, that all the kind of it's silliness. Like, we all had silliness in our sort of teenage relationship.
Very much silliness.
Yeah, and we all cringe when we think about it, but we also, like you said, it's sweet nostalgia as well. I wanted to ask you just a few more questions about the sort of production, because I think we went off in a bit of a tangent there. So with what was the actual production and the shoot like, and what are your sort of memories of that time? Was it easy? Did you have a lot of days? You mentioned you had a good rehearsal time.
We had a really good rehearsal time. It felt like a very, very enjoyable shoot, actually, and not all shoots are, and sometimes they're nightmarish. It felt very enjoyable. It may be post, like forgetting childbirth, but actually I remember it very intensely, and the cast were all so on board and very sort of closely knit and very bonded, because we shot a lot of it on the Isle of Man. So after rehearsal, we all went over to the Isle of Man. So we would, we were with each other the whole time. We'd go to these really odd clubs and Chinese gambling places. And so we were very bonded, but it was very intense, and definitely the friendship between Anna and Michelle, and I know they both talk about this, was very intense, and it would sometimes echo what was going on screen, off screen, as from day to day, which they both then also used, as all clever actors do. So it did feel very, we were all very much sort of intensely in it.
And just on the casting process with those two, Anna and Michelle, what was it that you saw? How did you cast them? How did they audition, I should say? And what was it in them that made you decide, these are my girls?
I just had that feeling when I met them. Actually, initially, Kirsten Dunst was on board to play Holly, and then she had to drop out. And then I met Michelle after that, and there was just something just extraordinary about her. She just got it. She just started sort of talking as the character almost, which the best actors often do, just subtly. And she was exhausted. I met her in New York, and she'd just driven up she was doing Dawson's Creek, and she'd just driven all the way up from South Carolina, North Carolina, wherever it was. She's sort of driven all night, and she said that she was sort of half asleep. She'd had a dream about an alien while she was on the motorway, which made me worry for her. But also, she just had this really just fascinating sort of sense about her, and she just committed fully. She just dyed her hair brown and started talking in her London accent and stayed in it the entire time on the shoot, and sort of almost stayed in character, really, I think she'd say, which, you know, with this whole British crew. And it's quite odd when we went to this quite ropey nightclub one night in Isle of Man, and these Dawson's Creek fangirls saw her in the toilet. Are you really you? What are you doing here? And she just sort of stayed in character.
Oh gosh, did she pretend she was someone else?
I know, it was really interesting. But yeah, no, she did. And then at the end of the shoot, she went back into her normal accent, and I felt so much loss. I just felt like I'd lost Holly, and she could see that. She said, "Oh no, I don't like me as myself." But yeah, no, she's so fully committed. Yeah, did.
And I mean, I could talk to you. You know, I've confessed how much I love this film. I could talk to you about it all night.
I'd like to hear your stories, but maybe after.
Yeah, maybe after. We'll catch up. I wanted to ask. So this, with this Q&A is part of our Woman with a Movie Camera series, where we sort of champion and spotlight female filmmaking, contemporary and retrospectively as well.
Yeah.
Who are the women in film and television that inspire you?
Oh, so many. I think before I made both my films, at that time it was Jane Campion. I just, when I was growing up, I just sort of didn't really know that women could be directors. I didn't even really have that conception. And her films are just absolutely just wonderful. The sort of rawness and the candor and the sort of ambivalent way that she saw women and allowed them to be, all the sort of shadow side and the shame and the teenagers. I just thought I'd never seen anything like it, even right from her shorts. And then obviously the piano, I just thought was incredible. And it's, so much about female gaze and obsession. And yeah, I just, I mean, but, it just felt, I guess it felt then like there weren't that many very visible women filmmakers. I mean, now, of course, one can, you can love Lynn Ramsey and Andrea Arnold and Sofia Coppola as directors in the way that you love Paul Thomas Anderson or whatever. You wouldn't say, oh, I like a woman director. I think one doesn't have to, and that's part of the work that you're doing as well. One doesn't just have to sort of categorize us in that way. But yeah, Jane Campion. And she made that great film, Two Friends. Have you seen that? I'm sure you have, which is about, it's a friendship and then it goes back in time.
Jane Campion.
Two Friends.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. She's amazing. Yeah, I guess that.
I have to know, in the world of Me Without You, are Holly and Marina still friends?
Oh, I think Holly got away. I think she got away. I'd like to think she got away. Otherwise, Marina would have had to have an enormous amount of therapy.
Yeah, I understand. Brilliant. Thank you so much for your time, Sandra. Really absolute pleasure speaking to you. For those watching, thank you for watching. And Me Without You is available to watch on BFI Player. So please, if you've got this far and you've not seen the film, please go and watch it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.